Good evening. It's 7 o'clock on Thursday, November 11th, 2021. This is a meeting of the Bellbrook Board of Education in public for the purpose of the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. But there is a time for public participation during the meeting as indicated on the agenda item. All right, Mr. Lyman, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Carpenter?
Here.
Mrs. Dorn?
Here.
Mr. Kinsey?
Present.
Mr. Price is absent, and Mrs. Slotman.
Here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Mr. Lyman, would you please give us the treasurer's report?
If I get a motion to approve the minutes from the October 28th meeting.
So moved.
Mr. Kinsey?
Second.
Mrs. Dorn? Any questions, comments, or corrections of the minutes? All right, please call the roll.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mrs. Dorn?
Yes.
Mr. Kinsey?
Yes.
Mrs. Slotman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Can I get a motion to approve the treasurer's report for the month of October?
So moved.
Mr. Kinsey?
Second.
Mrs. Slotman? Any questions, discussion? Mr. Lyman, please provide some update on that, please.
I think I'll take most of my time on the third item there, the 5-year forecast, and talk about it. I have the reports that I normally include each month with your board agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone have any questions about anything that was submitted?
All right, then call the roll for the treasurer's report.
Okay. Mrs. Dorn?
Yes.
Mr. Kinsey?
Yes.
Mrs. Slotman?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes, motion passes.
We get a motion to approve the 5-year forecast for the fiscal years 22 through 26 as presented with the agenda.
So moved.
Mrs. Dorn?
Second.
Mr. Kinsey?
I didn't get a graphic for this, but if you look in your packet at your forecast, I wanted to review a couple things. This will be on the website for anyone that's interested in seeing the details. We have the forecast itself and all the assumptions telling how we arrive at these numbers. As I always say, forecast is 3 years of history and then 5 years of forecasting the future, which there are a lot of things that affect the forecast. It's difficult to do a forecast when the state budget is only a 2-year budget, so we don't know what kind of funding we'll get from the state beyond 2 years. But we have things such as the supply chain issues that are affecting everything else right now. That affects our forecast. Fuel costs, of course. COVID affected it quite a bit. We have federal grants that we received that can be supplanted for some of the general fund money. That affects our budget and our forecast. And other things, all the reductions we made in the last couple of years, the levy that passed, all these things affected our forecast this time. So it may be quite different than one that we had a year ago. In fact, it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to review a couple things. The first line up there at the top, under fiscal year 22, that's bumped up quite a bit from the number before, the year before, because we passed a levy and half of the collection takes place that year because levies are collected on a calendar year basis and we operate on a fiscal year basis. So then on 2023, we get full collection of the levy, and then from then on out, that's a slight increase to it for inflation. The second revenue line there, or the second row, shows basically a flatlining of our state funding. It's been flatlined, pretty much flatlined for 10 years, and so I'm just projecting that's going to stay the same into the future. The Fair Schools Funding Act does not give us much money at all, so I didn't build it in here. It's basically nothing. So under expenditures, I just wanted to point out that row 4.05 is the principal, and then a couple lines down is the interest that we pay on our energy savings 10-year loan, and that expires in 2025. So that's why there is nothing in that column for 2026 for that. We have another item of debt that expires in 2024. So 2 of our 4 debt items will be dropping off in the next few years.
Nice.
And then for probably the most important row is 6.01. That's the one that shows what our whether we have revenues in excess of our expenditures for that year or vice versa, our profit, so to speak, you might say. And we are in the black each year until the last year of the forecast, 2026, where we're just slightly into the red, and that is the red for operating that year, not our balance. Our balance is on 7.02, and we have a solid balance all the way through the forecast, which supports the goal to, not have to come back to the public for years and years in the future. So I think that's about all I have. Unless there are any questions, the next, if you had a chance to read the pages attached, they probably answer a lot of your questions because it describes what percentage increases I used or what the thinking was, what items are included in each one of those rows.
I did have a question. I know later on tonight we're talking about the possibility of purchasing some buses. I'm just curious, where in the timeline, is that new for this year? Was that accounted for in previous years?
It's not accounted for. I didn't put it into the forecast. The way I've done this, and different treasurers do it differently, but I like to wait until it's absolutely set in stone that we're doing something and then put it into the next forecast for the years to come. Unless I know for sure that we're going to do something, I try to leave it out. There are things though, like when we had plans for a Chromebook refresh for technology, I built that in a couple years down the road because that seemed solid that we were going to do that. And then we got a grant to pay for that, so now we're not doing it. But I built that in, and I did not build anything in for increasing the busing, but the balance we've got there, it's not going to be a financial issue at this time.
That makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Would some of the funds come from permanent improvement as well?
They would. Yes, purchase of school buses would definitely come from permanent improvement. We've been building a balance there. We haven't had any big, cross your fingers, disastrous roofs that need to be fully replaced or anything like that, where we chillers that need to be replaced on air conditioning units and things. So.
Other questions or comments? Do you have anything? All right, please call the roll.
Mr. Kinsey,
Yes.
Mrs. Sloughman,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes,
Mrs. Dorn.
Yes.
motion passes. All right, going to correspondence. I did get a couple items. One, we have draft policies that we were presented last regular meeting on the 28th, and then some folks saying, is there a way that we can see all the policy changes? So that's something that I'll talk with administration about, the potential for us to make those public so that everyone can be aware of the changes. We have a service that provides the updates for us. If you've ever seen a printed copy of the policy manual, it's about this tall. It's great for exercise, but these are the changes we're looking at for this time. They're included in our packets. But so I'll talk with administration about the potential for that. And one other item that came from Mrs. Brinegar about reaching out to our community for the upcoming school calendar to get feedback on that. So we'll talk through what options we might have associated with that as well. Was there other correspondence that folks had?
And I think it's important to talk about the policy, the draft policy changes and the service you talked about. Those are policy changes that are driven by law, like the service kind of monitors the legal space, and sometimes that drives changes. So
Absolutely.
It's not that we can't purposefully make changes in other areas or whatnot, but these are all changes that were driven by recent legal changes mostly, right?
Correct.
Legal changes, policies at the federal level, state level, laws.
So the
and
service is monitoring all of that and kind of,
Service has attorneys that draft all those policies, and then we, if possible, if we want to, we could customize them. But again, you don't want to really customize if it's something at the federal level, that it's a law at that point. But sometimes there's some options with those.
Any other correspondence that folks got? Thanks for that clarification, Mrs. Dorn. All right. We'll go on to good news recognition. And we have a number of folks to recognize this evening. I don't know if my certificates are in the same order as what's up there. So I'll try to. The first one is for the Bellbrook High School Volleyball 2021 SWBL Champions. And this evening, Amanda von Hamdorf is going to receive the award for the team. You want to have them come up too? Are there?
I don't think that they're here. They've got a lot of volleyball practice tonight.
Okay.
back to
Back to volleyball already. All right.
Okay,
Yes.
well, give our congratulations to them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. All right. For the Bellbrook High School Golf 2021 SWBL Championship. And that's Coach Jeff Scoey. You have your golfers here tonight?
Yeah, I got 3 or 4 of them.
Okay. Congratulations.
Yeah.
to you and to them. Congratulations. 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 Congrats. And congrats.
You didn't hear me
I think
when you
Mr.
stay
Ham's
here?
taking a picture of you.
And you got a couple.
Take
I got a couple
picture.
certificates for a
David.
couple golfers too.
David, take a picture.
You didn't hear David, you went?
Oh, okay. All right. These one golfer are going to be coming back here. Two golfers coming back here.
Yeah.
Bellbrook High School Girls Tennis 2021 SWBL Champions. And girls tennis, Lauren Deaver. Are you here? Any of the tennis players here? All right, come on up. Representing your team, you are Maya. Oh, Maya? Okay, very good. Well, I'm going to see you up here again in a minute. But congratulations for the team. And thank you. All right, Bellbrook High School Girls Soccer 2021 SWBL Champions. SWBL Champions. I need to slow down a little bit. And for girls soccer, we have Brad Stork. Okay, Brad, congratulations.
Thank you. Also, team captain, Holly Evans, Randy People, and Chris Flynn.
Very good, congratulations. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, for golf, Andrew McGill, Golf Division 1, 2021 District Champion and State Qualifier. Congratulations. And Maya Brink, coming back to my left, Girls Tennis Division 1, 2021 District Champion and State Qualifier. And CJ Scoey, named 2021 SWBL Golfer of the Year. And finally, your dad, Jeff Scully, named 2021 SWBA Golf Champion of the Golf Coach of the Year. I'm going to try to be a little less tongue-tied during the rest of this meeting. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Going on to reports to the board. Bellbrook High School teacher Pam Schultz, the
Yep.
other TP.
Nope, she's not presenting tonight.
She's not here this evening.
Nope.
Okay. So Dr. Kozad, to you for a brief update on COVID-19 dashboard.
I'm shocked that everybody left for the COVID-19 update, but anyway. Yeah, we'll make it short. Mr. Bowles, do you have it up there? Or in a second? So much shorter than we really have done in the past on the presentation here. All right, go ahead to the next one. So again, just give you the trends here. This is under 18 daily cases just for Greene County. This is as of yesterday. Again, you can see the trend continuing to go down as it has been. Again, this is a slide that I show every time through this update. I'm going to the next one. I'm not going to show the state one. So this is our district update. And the top one there is kind of the weekly update as the week goes on a daily basis. So that's from Monday through Wednesday. And then I put a new one in here that since we've done the mask to stay and test to play, just so that we can see the numbers since that has been implemented. And that's the middle one there. And then the last one is the total through the whole school year from the beginning of the school year. So we can better keep track of the number of cases since we put in the mask to stay and test to play. And again, I think it's naive to think that we won't have any cases. We're going to have some cases. And so that is there. And just to also note that if there are some quarantines going on there, it's either because it's their own personal choice, they still have the personal choice to quarantine rather than do the test to stay, or it's a sibling or relative. So if it's a sibling, they really can't do the test or mask to stay because that's different rules since they're at home rather than at school. So that's why you do see some quarantines in there because of that. Also to keep track of the number of positive cases that come out of that were close contacts, the number of positive cases that come out of that. And so we have had some positive cases out of one particular classroom at Stephen Bell. So that particular class is masking at this point. And so, but in the past before this, we would have had 24, 25 kids quarantining or, up to upwards of 20 quarantining. Now we only have, 3 or 4 because of the positive person and then the other quarantine. And so there's 15, 16, 18, 20 kids that are able to stay in school that previously would have had to have been on quarantine. So again, there's still going to be positive cases out there. So that just lets us further see that. Any questions on this particular screen, since that is that's a new piece of information in there to track for mask to stay. Okay, and then just as I've done previously, just kind of keeping track of our absences or absence rate. Again, we're still at a lower rate than we have been previously in past years. Usually we're the 94, 95, 96 kind of district percentage there. So we're still a little higher than normal. And then again, the 6.5% of daily absences due to quarantine. Again, some of those quarantines can be for home exposure. So if it's home exposure, again, they they don't have the ability to mask to stay. They have to quarantine at home. So that's why some of that percent is still up there a little bit because of that. But again, much lower than it has been. That's the 5.8 is probably the lowest it's been the whole school year. So trending in the right way for that. And then you can see the next slide here. Again, that's a graphical view of what I just showed you. So again, at lower rates here of the absence due to quarantine. And then in a graphical view, the next one is the daily attendance rate summary. Again, we really want to, the normal, whatever normal is, in a normal pre-COVID year, we'd have been 95, 96%, attendance rate, but we're in the low 90s there. So, overall, my assessment is we're doing really well, knock on wood here, to test to stay, mask to stay and test to play. So things are going really well, and so hopefully those things will continue.
All right. Any questions for Dr. Cozad? All right. Going on to open communication.
Let me get it. I got it.
Thank you very much. Up there. All right. Thank you very much. All right. We have Karen Long. Welcome back from the other side of the table.
I swore I'd never come. One of the greatest life lessons I've learned is the power of showing up for people. Dr. Cozad, I support you and I stand by you. School board, I support you and I stand by you. Mr. Lemming, I support you and I stand by you. The bad news is people are crueler, meaner, and more evil than you've ever imagined. The good news is people are kinder, gentler, and more loving than you've ever dreamed. Author unknown. The loud voices can be easier to hear, but behind each loud voice is many, many quiet voices full of support and kindness. I can't begin to imagine how you must be feeling at this time, but the little taste of this that I've had in the past, I felt lonely. You're not alone. I encourage our community to stand up in support of Dr. Cozad, Mr. Liming, and the board. Stand up to show you're with them, write an email and a note of appreciation. For all of you, it's okay to not be okay right now. It's okay to not feel brave right now. There's people standing with you. Two of my favorite quotes I wanted to share in closing. Promise me you'll always remember you're braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. Winnie the Pooh. Be who you are and say what you feel, because those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. Dr. Seuss.
Thank you very much. And that was our entire list. So you got to speak both first and last. The next segment of our board meeting is our consent agenda. It is items 8A and 8B. It is for employment. And there was a hand carry. Is that associated with?
Yep, it is
this? Okay, would you kind of-
8B1.
I'm going to share that one because that's probably not, is the hand carry not on there, so.
Sure, it is a replacement, just a change in contract status, a recommended approval of voluntary transfer for Chris Berger rather than a new contract. So it's a voluntary transfer.
Okay.
Yeah. Everything else is the same.
Are there any items that board members want us to pull out of the consent agenda and address individually? All right, hearing none, then is there a motion to approve our consent agenda for items 8A, 1, 2, and 3, and 8B, 1, 2, and the additional 1? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Kinsey,
Second.
Mrs. Dorn. Any questions or comments? All right, Mr. Lyman, please call the roll.
Mrs. Sloughman,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes,
Mrs. Dorn,
Yes?
Mr. Kinsey.
Yes.
motion passes.
All right, next C, payment in lieu of transportation. So recommend approval for payment in lieu of transportation for services for students attending area non-public or private schools for the 21-22 school year due to impracticality of providing school district transportation per Ohio Revised Code, Section 3327.02B.
All right, is there a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Dorn,
Second.
Mrs. Sloughman.
Again, just to explain that, so instead of, since some of these schools, there's maybe only 1 or 2 kids that go to them, so it would be, as it says, impractical to provide transportation services for them. So Ohio Revised Code allows us to pay them a amount of money. So this year it's $538.55 that we pay for each of those students for transportation for the year.
All right, any questions or comments? All right, Mr. Lyman, please call the roll.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes,
Mrs. Dorn,
Yes?
Mr. Kinsey,
Yes.
Mrs. Sloughman.
Yes.
motion passes.
D, purchase of school buses. Recommend adoption of the following resolution for the purchase of up to 5 school buses. Whereas the Bellbrook-Sugarcreek Local Board of Education wishes to advertise and receive bids for the purchase of up to 5 school buses. Therefore, be resolved, the Bellbrook-Sugarcreek Local Board of Education wishes to participate and authorize the Southwestern Ohio Purchasing Council to advertise and receive bids on the board's behalf as per the specifications submitted for the cooperative purchase for up to 5 school buses.
You have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Dorn,
Second.
Mr. Kinsey. Any questions or comments?
Again, go ahead.
Go ahead. So this is not necessarily 5, but up to 5 school buses as the need is determined over time
Up for this fiscal year.
for this fiscal year.
Yep.
Okay.
So again, we don't have to do a separate bid for that. The EPC does that bidding process for us. As long as we participate with them, we don't have to do a separate bid. They do the bidding on our behalf.
Okay.
And does this authorize the purchase of them? My understanding is this is just to put out the call for bids.
No, this authorizes the purchase.
This authorizes the
Yes.
purchase of up to 5. Okay. Can you just talk a little bit more about kind of the need? Just explain the need. Is this primarily replacing older fleet? Is this in preparation for new routes?
I would say a combination of both of those. Our average age is going on to about 15 years for our buses, over 150,000 miles. So we have a dramatically aging fleet, but then also to possibly add a few more, and again, a few more routes. And so we could come back and do another resolution to purchase more, but we could also wait for the next fiscal year to do that. That starts in July. So we could do something next fiscal year and still be ready for next school year. But with supply chain issues and so forth, we're thinking we might have to get ahead of some of these rather than wait for the next fiscal year to purchase some of them. But we'll kind of assess where we're at with our buses right now. But we definitely have an aging fleet.
I've heard, yes.
Again, our mechanics do a fantastic job, but you can only do so much, and at some point, it just is not. It's not cost efficient to keep them on the road.
And how many were these all 5 of these delayed purchases that from previous cuts? Like, weren't we supposed to have purchased? And I'm sorry, I'm not asking you to recall.
Yeah,
I feel like we
we
were
purchased.
supposed to have purchased.
Yes.
Well, we at least I kind of did in my head the calculation that to keep buses where they need to be age-wise, we need to replace 2 or 3 a year. And I think we went a couple years where we only maybe did 1. And you get so farther behind, and then you have to make a larger purchase at some point, or it actually saves us money in many ways because you have a lot less repairs, things like that to think about.
We've maybe only purchased one or two in the past 4 years. And one of those, I believe, was a handicap bus. Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think some of I'd have to take a look, at some point in the past, we purchased 8 or 10 in one particular school year. And so again, those all come up at the same time. So we're doing our best to get off that little, that a little bit. But you come to a point where you have so many that need replaced.
And I don't know if I made this clear earlier when I was talking to you, Mr. Kinsey, but all of these buses, if we bought 5 today, we would be spending the money out of our permanent improvement fund. So it does not appear at all on that forecast that I showed. That's a separate money we've been saving for this purpose. So it's not going to lower the forecast balance in any way by buying these buses. We can buy them out of the general fund. We have the money in permanent improvement.
All right, other questions or comments? All right, Mr. Liming, please call the roll.
Mrs. Dorn,
Yes.
Mr. Kinsey,
Yes.
Mrs. Sloughtman,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter.
Yes, motion passes.
E, out-of-state travel, recommend approval of the following out-of-state travel: high school softball team to Fort Walton, Florida, March 27 to the 31st, 2022, for the purpose of participation in spring training games practice, no cost to the district.
You have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Kinsey,
Second.
Mrs. Dorn. Questions or comments? So that's in March. What a great time to,
We just approved the baseball team to go on
Correct.
this exact trip last.
yeah, that's right. So,
They need a new board member, chaperone.
any chaperones? That's right. Very nice. All right, Mr. Liming, please call the roll.
Okay, Mr. Kinsey,
Yes.
Mrs. Sloughtman,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes,
Mrs. Dorn.
Yes.
motion passes.
F, additions, revisions to board policy, recommend approval of the following additions, revisions to Board of Education policy. Again, this is a second read. I gave this to the board last time at the last board meeting on the 28th. And so that's the first read. This is the second read for these policies. Again, we do these revisions to board policies twice a year. We do them in the spring and then in the fall. So that's the typical time that we review our policies and do any type of updates or revisions.
Okay. Any comments, corrections, discussion associated with the board policy changes?
None about these. I read through these and they're all fairly benign, or you could tell what was driving them based on
Sure.
legal changes. I would like to discuss though.
Do we need a first and second?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
We need a first and second. So do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Kinsey
Second.
and Mrs. Dorn. Thank you.
Now, sorry.
Thank you, sir.
Be my role man over here. At what point in time, or I would like to, I guess, propose that we do a more comprehensive policy review at some point in time, just so that we can level set, rather than just being driven by what policy changes are driven by law. And whether that an evening 7 o'clock board meeting is probably not the best, and I don't know about the best way to tackle that, because like you said, that stack of policy
big
is
stack.
huge, whether we chunk it up, and I don't know. But perhaps as we set our agenda for the coming year, that we set aside one of the Saturday morning meetings or whatnot to really focus on policy update, revision, and just taking a look at things that have been in place
Mhm.
for some time that perhaps are due to be updated, where the updates aren't driven by something external, just something internal. Just wanted to put that out there.
Okay.
So no.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, not only will it help educate the public, it'll help educate me. I can read them, and I do read them. I read everything, but maybe that'll open up a conversation about history of something that I'm sure there's a lot of institutional wisdom that could come out of a meeting like that with people asking questions. And I think it's a great idea.
All right. Make a note, we'll be talking about 2022 early on. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Liming, please call the roll.
Mrs. Sloughman,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes,
Mrs. Dorn,
Yes,
Mr. Kinsey.
Yes.
motion passes.
Leads right into G, 2022 meeting calendar. Recommend approval of the 2022 meeting calendar for the Bellbrook-Sugarcreek Board of Education.
We have a motion.
So moved.
Mr. Kinsey and Mrs. Sloughman.
Again, this was shared at the last board meeting in October as kind of a first read, and essentially following the same schedule that we did this school year of adding a regular board meeting / work session. Even though there's no official meeting called a work session, it's either a regular meeting or a special meeting.
Right.
Regular meetings once a quarter additional. So I just put forth this meeting calendar, just there was not any discussion to my knowledge of doing anything differently, but obviously we have some time if there's additional changes that need to be made or just additional discussion of some changes for next year. I know we were trying to put together a meeting date for OSBA, for some training with OSBA in January sometime.
Mm-hmm.
That's not on this particular calendar.
No, but we can essentially if we decide to have some modifications, we can ratify it at the organizational meeting too in January and for the whole year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an option for us as well. So is there a motion to approve this with a caveat that we can modify it again in January?
You just had a motion second, didn't
I haven't gotten a motion in a second
you? Oh,
yet.
okay.
Yeah, we do.
We do.
Oh, we did?
Mike and Virginia. Yep, Mike and Virginia.
Okay,
okay.
very good. Thank you so much. Having a hard time keeping track of everybody. All right. Mr. Lyman, then please call the roll.
Okay. Mr. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mrs. Dorn,
yes,
Mr. Kinsey,
Yes.
Mrs. Sloughman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
So is that something the board would like me to add to the December meeting, or wait to, as another discussion in the December, or wait till January to discuss? Just trying to think of when the board would like me to put that back on the agenda.
I would say wait till after January.
Yeah,
Probably be.
well, at the
After
January
or at the
meeting, we can
January
do
meeting.
that.
Okay, yeah.
But at that point, it becomes, the rest of that anything else we would adjust would be special meetings. If we put it on the calendar, then it's by the organizational meeting, and it's a regular meeting.
I got you.
And we don't have to put out another meeting notice for everything that's on this calendar.
Okay, that makes sense.
So put that on the calendar on the January meeting for discussion.
Mhm. And then we can also feed any suggestions to you
Okay.
in the meantime.
Thank you for doing that.
Okay. I can do that.
All right, so
Okay. Moving on to H.
H.
Items, information, or discussion. I don't have anything.
Nor do
Anybody
I.
else?
All right, and we are not going to go into executive session this evening. So if there is nothing else, is there a motion for adjournment? Mrs. Sloughman,
second,
Mrs. Dorn. All right, Mr. Liming, please call the roll.
Mr. Kinsey,
Yes.
Mrs. Sloughman,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes,
Mrs. Dorn.
yes.
motion passes. We are adjourned at 7:39. It is a record.